All right, good afternoon, everybody. I don't think everybody's here yet, but just for the good of the order, I was keeping track of folks as they're coming in. We do have a quorum established at the moment, and we'll just give a couple more minutes for some folks to trickle in.
Yeah, regrets, Dustin. This is Bill. I'm gonna have to leave around 3:15, 3:30.
And for so far, we are sitting, I think, one seat over quorum. So if you have to leave a little bit early, it shouldn't affect the business.
Thank you.
You said at 1:30?
No,
Sorry, 3:30?
3:15 or 3:30.
Okay, gotcha.
Hi, Dustin. This is Che. What determines quorum?
Right now, with our current makeup, seven seats being occupied, or seven seats need to be present to determine our quorum. So sitting right here, minus what some people that might have come in the last couple seconds. I've got one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. I've got nine seats represented at the moment with folks that I've seen on our attendees list.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Dustin, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I certainly can.
I think I'm having problems hearing other people with my phone. Can you try again?
Can you hear me running a sound check
Yeah,
for
okay. I'm gonna have to log on with another computer. I'm having problems hearing. Some reason there's something wrong with my computer, so I'm gonna log on a different computer.
Gotcha. So I'll wait to see Hoyt get back on here and then we'll go ahead and begin. Either that or we'll wait until 2:05 to roll around. All right, it looks like Hoyt's joined us. It's just before 2:05. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the June 20th, 2024 IBC tag meeting where we are working on our significant changes and existing amendments reports.
Hey, Dustin, can you
Yes,
hear
sir.
me?
I
Yeah,
certainly
okay, you can
can.
hear me. Great. I do have to go to the restroom real quick. I'll be right back. So
Dental.
it'll be 30 seconds.
Gotcha. So we're working on the existing amendments and significant changes reports, and our chairs are not here in the room. I will go a little bit slow. We'll do a roll call, and then we'll need to appoint a chair pro tem for this meeting. So I'll begin off with primary chair Todd Bayruther, who I'm not showing in our attendees list. Alternate chair Roger Haringa. I'm also not showing him in our attendees list. For architect primary, Joe Mayo.
Dustin Joe will not be able to attend today, so I am here as an active alternate.
Gotcha. So that is Chef Fortaleza for the architect alternate.
Thank you.
For the building primary, we got Tim Woodard.
Here.
Thank you. For the alternate, Steve Belzak.
I'm here.
Thank you. For the fire services representatives, primary, Dan Young.
Here.
Thank you. For the alternate, Lance Dahl.
He won't be making it today.
He mentioned that he would be late. He might show up a little bit later, but is out for now.
Cool.
And then cities and counties primary, Hoyt Jeter, are you back from the quick break? We'll come back. For the alternate, Sean Karlstrom. I'm not seeing him here in our list. For general contractor or developer primary, Bill Mybush.
Present.
Thank you. For structural engineers primary, Joshua Mergens.
Present.
Thank you. For the alternate, Trent Tinney. Not in our attendees list. For the persons with disabilities or accessibility expert primary, Michael Shaw.
Present.
Thank you. For the building owner or property manager primary, Brett Conway.
Present.
Thank you. For the general public subject matter expert primary, Michael Barth.
Present.
Thank you. For the alternate, Leah Summer.
Here.
Thank you. For the state enforcement agency primary, Paul Clark.
Present.
Thank you. And for the fire protection engineer primary, Andy Leonto.
Present.
Thank you. And circling back to Hoyt Jeter.
Yep, I'm back.
Thank you. All right, with that, we have a quorum. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seats represented. Only the chairs are missing on this one. So thanks everybody for being here today. Our next order of business is to elect a chair pro tem for this meeting. And so we'd be in a position to entertain a motion on that.
I would motion to elect Dustin as the chair pro tem.
Second.
All righty. All those in favor of appointing me, Dustin Kerb, as the chair pro tem for this meeting, please say aye.
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 All righty. Thank you. And that was Josh and Hoyt that did the first and second on that, right?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. So next on our agenda is to review and approve our agenda. So this is pretty much the same agenda we saw on Tuesday. Except for there's a note in there for number 5 that some items may have changed based on work that we've completed at the last meeting. So I'm going to update the share. So this is Rosanna's screen, and I'm gonna share my. So on this one, we have some modifications shown. The minutes, due to the holiday yesterday, we didn't have ready for the meeting today, so we won't have anything to review for agenda topic number 3. And then you'll see in item number 5, we hit chapter 11, 17, 19, 20, 28, 29, 30, and 31 at last meeting. And so I'm just going to put out there that we will not be hitting those chapters today and just start at the top of the list and work our way down. And so with that, we'd be looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. This is Bill.
Bill, all right. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
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 Awesome. Thank you. All right, let me back up just a little bit. Is there any members of the public who wish to be recognized at this meeting? I'm seeing no hands and hearing no voices, so we'll move on from that. We'll move to agenda item number 4, public comments on items not on the agenda. Does anybody from the public have anything they'd like to talk about that's not on the agenda today? All righty, seeing no hands, we will move on to item number 5, which is review of the work completed and received by staff. I am prepared today with our preface chapter and chapter 4, so we will kick it off right there. All right, let me just finish making some notes here. All right.
Hey, Joe.
All righty, so moving forward here today, we should be seeing the 2024 International Building Code Word document, the preface section. This one's pretty straightforward. In here in red, we see some changes made by both the ICC and for us in our state amendments. We're going to be looking to add this line here. It includes Washington State Amendments, Chapter 5150 WAC, effective November 1st of 2026. This first printing date will likely change with publication. And I don't have a spreadsheet to go along with this one. All righty. So moving on through here, there's only a couple changes that I've made to the base ICC document. Nothing in here. Our table of contents has some added sections. Where is it at? Should be chapter 4. We have the addition of section 429 for electric vehicle charging infrastructure and section 430 for recycled materials. And I believe that's all I have in the table of contents. Oh, we have section 2115 added in chapter 21 for emissions standards. And then section 3115 added to chapter 31 for fixed guideway transit and passenger rail systems. And then we have the beginning wax of WAC 5150 for authority with no changes in that section. 5150-002 for purpose with no changes in that section. 5150-003 will have some changes in here. We are updating to the 2024 edition here. And because of the way we're proposing to do the wax, let me share my internet screen. So this is a list of the wax of 5150. In 003, it's just the International Building Code. And if we go down here to the International Existing Building Code section, that would be kind of the twin to that one. There's nothing in it except for a 2021 Existing Building Code. So I'm going to propose the change in 5150-003 to include the International Existing Building Code in that section. And that's why it's on the Word document there for this particular code. In WAC 5150-005, no changes. 51, nope, that one's got the wrong WAC number there. 5150-007 with exceptions, no changes.
Hey, Dustin, I have a question for you real quick on the existing building code. You know, obviously it references back to the IBC. Okay.
Mhm.
So where you write that on the existing building code, a question came up to me when I was at the city of Tacoma. If it goes to the IBC and we have a WAC amendment to that IBC, they're still supposed to follow that. So when you look at the IEBC, if you could, I don't know how you could reference that to make it clear that it's still with the state amendments to the IBC. They
I
cannot
hear you.
not use the state amendments. Does that make
So
sense?
I think it does make sense. So like in the IEBC section for when we do WAC 5150003 in there, maybe the international, well, I know what you're saying. I'm not sure exactly where to stick it in there, but let's make a note of that and we can
Yeah, because like you see that like 5150, that's an example, the barrier-free stuff. That's where it
uh-huh.
came up actually. There was an existing building and they need to do some barrier-free accessibility stuff. And it was weird. That's just where it came up. So just, just something like that to make sure it's clear for, people. And this was for someone out of state. It threw me for a loop when they asked the question because it made sense. So,
Gotcha. So, when we get to the IEBC, I think that would probably be the best place to have that language. Do you agree or?
yeah, that I agree with
Okay.
that. This is, yeah.
Okay. It might be something we do here in 5150003. Or maybe we might need to create a new section in there, but I like what you were saying there. And so I have this note here on the preface section of the IBC. And if you can just remind us when we get to IEBC to maybe take a look at that and we can include that there as well. Tim, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just why we're paused there before we move on. Back in the table of contents, because Appendix P was taken up with the new loft provisions, I think we just need to add an Appendix Q for demolition, debris, and whatever else it's called.
Agreed. Thank you. So, what is that one called? That one, construction and demolition material management. Work with me. Ooh. Messing it up. Okay. That'll work. And with that one, I don't think we need to include any subparts in there, do we? That's section 1.
No, I mean, it's maybe 3 or 4
Yeah.
sections.
I think if we just have it in there like that, it should be okay. All right. Thank you, Tim. And that's the end of my preface. So we would be in a position to entertain a motion to move that one to the master document.
This is Bill. I move to take this document to the master document.
Thank you.
Second.
Tim, thank you. Is there any further discussion on moving the preface to the master document? Seeing no hands, hearing no voices, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is there any in opposition?
Aye.
Hearing no opposition, that motion passes. All right. Save that one. I'm just doing some record keeping here. Give me one moment. All right, I've got chapter 4 next. Okay, I won't go quite that small. All righty. So we're starting off with the existing amendments in 403, and looks like our significant changes start about the same place as well. 403.3. So, all right. 403.3.1 is our first significant change in here. A lot of these I'm not as well versed as I think the majority of the group here determining if they're significant, but I was able to find these on the ICC proposals documents and where they show some cost stuff. I have included them in the significant changes report. So the number of sprinklers on this one, section 403, based on building height. There's no cost associated with this change. I don't think that we need an amendment. And I can bring us to the ICC proposal if we'd like, but it's ICC proposal G56-21. And that's where I'm pulling the cost information from this one. Moving on to 403.3.1.1. 3.1.1. Buildings 420 feet or less in height. I don't think that this one's much of a significant change, but it's included in the changes that bring in 403.3.1.2. So for the first one, there's no cost. So don't need an amendment. And for the second one, buildings more than 420 feet in height, the proposal G57-21 shows that it's a decrease in cost, and I've flagged it for no amendment needed.
I always have a question on this. High rises are defined in the code as parentheses, and the high rises define that as a 420. And I always wondered why we do this, why we don't use the code language for high rises.
I don't know.
Because I mean that's
So-
defined directly in the code. It's a defined term.
Well,
And
I'm a real person, honestly.
I think the UBC it wasn't as clear, but maybe that was why. It's been in there forever in our state amendment.
Gotcha. I mean, this isn't a state amendment section right here. So I guess maybe I skipped over a state amendment in here where it standby power loads. We haven't quite gotten to where the state amendments exist in this section. So I'm not sure. Do you think that we should amend 403.3.1.2? I'm not sure what happened to Hoyt there.
I clicked on mute on accident, sorry.
Okay,
No
worries.
Yeah, I thought what I'm saying is high rises, I guess it doesn't matter. That's fine. It's what the state building code says, but it's a minor thing. I shouldn't even brought it up. I mean, high rise is 420 feet. I just always thought that was weird in the code.
Okay.
That's additional.
Justin, this is Bill. I missed the part. You said something about there's a cost reduction.
Yeah, there's a decrease identified by the ICC proposal G57-21. Here, I'll pull it up.
And remember on all these, this is all designated with fire, right? So even what we decide, it should be coordinated also with the fire code tag. So
Let's see. Pull this off to the side here. It's G57.21.
Don't mean to go down a rabbit hole, just it just kind of struck me what you said.
Gotcha.
Okay. So. Yeah.
Where are we at here?
Yeah, you just had something there about reduction. There it is.
But if I.
Okay, yeah, it's in here. 403. Here we go. So this is where I'm pulling my cost information from as the ICC proposal. So we have this section here that we're currently talking about. And at the bottom here, way down, they're saying that the code change proposal will decrease the cost of instruction. It reduces construction cost and design time. And I didn't really evaluate much on the reason statement on that one. I'm taking ICC at their face value on that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
and just to clarify that, Dustin, for that cost value stuff, that is what is submitted by the proponent that puts it in. It's not, ICC does not verify the cost stuff. The proponent's required to put in a cost estimate, and just an FYI, ICC does not verify what they actually put in, what their cost is.
So
if
it's
that
not
makes
vetted.
sense. It's not vetted, yeah. They just want to really know, are you increasing the cost? And then you have to put a reason why or what the reason is, and they just kind of believe you. So
Gotcha. Well, do you guys think that this one would decrease the cost on this one as far as the change goes?
I just thought it clarified the code. I didn't think it was really a major change.
No, I honestly didn't think there was a whole lot of significant change in here. Just part of my tack for trying to catch stuff is anything that's a new section that will be included in here. And then for some of the other stuff, I read through them and didn't see any significant changes. But since I was able to find these in their proposal reports, I included them in there.
All right, I understand. It just caught me when he said reduction versus just cost neutral.
Gotcha. Well, I can change that to be a no instead of decrease.
No, it's a neutral cost. I don't think it actually decreases it personally. But I mean, maybe other people can input. I think it was just more of a clarification. So
Okay. I think bless you's in order for whoever that was. All right, 403.4.8.3 for standby power. We have an amendment that adds another number 4, with my recommendation to keep the amendment. Let's see where our next spot is.
yeah, that's something we've been doing for a while.
Yeah. I can see that.
Going into the elevator pit, was that the one?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had that for a while. The one thing is the oil separator that has to be, but we've been using it for a while, that changed. So
Gotcha. Back to the significant changes, 403.5.3 stairway door operation. Showing this one, the proposal document shows an increase for this one, and I'm not proposing an amendment for this.
Sixth Avenue.
These ones I didn't consider significant. 35.4. We have smoke-proof enclosures with an existing amendment there. I don't see a reason to change that amendment. No, 405.7 dot or 412.2.2.1 stairways is our next state amendment. We'll skip over here. 407.4.4.4 is our next spot. We have a new section, circulation paths within a care suite. This one, the proposal doesn't identify any costs. I don't think we need an amendment for this section. Seems clarifying. Moving to a bunch of renumbered sections here. The next section is 411.3.1.
You said 411.3.1?
Yes. So we got the detection and alarm systems, new section alarm pre-signal, and then alarm activation right there next to each other. The proposal from ICC indicates a decrease in cost. And I wanted to put these as no amendment needed, but I didn't. And then we have 411.3 or 411.6. So next section. Flammable decorative materials. Decreasing cost indicated in the proposals. No amendment needed for this section. I think that'll get us close to our next state amendment. It's 412.2.2.1. Which is there. So in stairways, we have a amendment adding on group I2 roofs with heliports or heli stops. In structures enclosing exit stair enclosures or elevator shafts shall be enclosed with fire barriers, opening protectives that match the rating of their respective shaft enclosures below. And it looks like 17. I'm in the wrong spot, sorry. Change that. Okay, there we go. Anyway, this one I have keep the existing amendment as modified. Our state amendment adds the sentence at the end here, but in the middle of it we have cut out a metric measurement, and in the next standard measurement afterwards, our state amendment still includes that metric measurement. So my proposition is to keep the existing amendment but modify it to include that metric measurement there.
Well, the problem is, what's weird is they did feet in millimeters, and that's not a standard way of doing metrics in feet.
So it should have been just meters.
Yeah, it's really weird because we're not good with metric in our around our country. They
Yeah.
mess up. They sometimes will do meters and it's not really a change. What happens sometimes, the feet and inches don't add up exactly correct. So that's why sometimes they do meters and sometimes they do millimeters. It's silly. I mean, it's not silly. I wish we would.
So just because the inches and everything doesn't line up with what the meter marking would be to get a more precise spot, they put the millimeters in there.
Yeah, which is so it gets exactly 60 feet, because remember metric doesn't, it's not exactly 3 feet,
Yeah.
a meter is not exactly 3 feet. It's kind of strange to me, but that's, they want to make it exact. So
No, I gotcha. So, yeah. So do we want to recommend including that millimeter measurement, or no? I'm not
I,
married
I
to.
wouldn't I wouldn't touch the metric stuff, just to be honest. I don't think we should be deleting the metric unless you want to go through the whole code and delete all the metric.
No,
I,
it's just that this one spot in our state amendment, it maintains one metric measurement, but not the other one.
yeah,
So
you don't really need it to be. I personally wouldn't. I would stay with this national code metric conversion. They've gone through it a few times. There's been mistakes in the past. I actually haven't run the numbers for that,
okay.
if it's correct, but it's I I mean, unless someone else knows anyone doing metric. I mean, even though I learned metric in college way back when, we never converted. So
I rely on the Google to make the conversion for me.
I
All
think it's
right.
because the tool industry wants you to buy 2 sets of tools.
All right. Moving. Next one, 412.7.3. This is another one that I have to keep the existing amendment, but to modify it to include the new model code language shown in blue here. Like, hold on, something's goofy. I'm in the right spot. I'm reading the wrong lines on my spreadsheet, so I'm sorry. We already did
412.
we already did 412.7.3, and I didn't scroll to it on the Word document, so that's my bad. I will skip over to significant changes real quick. We'll do 414.2.5.4, which is in here, flammable gas. Reading this one, this is my opinion. I couldn't find this in the proposal documents with ICC, but in my opinion, this would decrease cost on this one because it allows more of the quantity in the particular occupancy. Yeah, but then I don't see as we need an amendment for this one.
No, there is a mistake. The building code missed that. It was in the fire code, so I had to get to the building code. I think there was a misprint in printing. So I think it's been in the fire code for a little while. So
All right, so this is just bringing that change up to the front. And then this table below is just the same information, but in tabular form.
hang on, you're going a little faster than I could keep up. I believe that is correct. I believe that is correct. I remember when you were at the fire tag, they're going to be going through this a little more. They're the experts on this. So we should match what the fire tag does, because this is a direct copy. That's why it's parentheses F. It's pretty much a direct copy out of the fire code, and it's heard by the fire IFC. So
And all of these are straight out of the fire code.
they're supposed to be. But sometimes with the printing, the updates didn't always get moved over correctly.
So for 415.11.1.1 hazardous materials, we got some new language and a new exception in there. The ICC proposal didn't indicate any cost for this change, and I'm not marking it as an amendment needed. I think that'll bring us back to our 420.2 is where we want to land next. All right, here's 420.2. We have our state amendment adds a sentence at the end of the section, and there's new model language here in blue. And my proposal is to keep the existing amendment and modify it to include the new model code language. Then getting into 420 next for existing amendments. I'm going to 423 for next significant change.
You know, on that change up there that you're changing, I thought the building code adopted that. Because it says walls separating dwelling units in the same building, blah, blah, blah. It's all the same building. I think our change shall not be classified. Buildings containing multiple sleeping of common use or central kitchen shall not be classified as a single dwelling.
And are you saying that the new model code language incorporates that requirement or that provision?
Well, I think that provision has been in there when we had both codes. And it's if you read 420.2 directly, separation walls, and they're separating dwelling units. Walls separating dwelling units from sleeping units in the same building. What are you trying to? It already says sleeping units in the same building. I'm trying to figure out what building containing multiple sleeping units with common use to central kitchens shall not be classified as a single dwelling. That's a change, right?
Well, so the green text is the existing state amendment. All the black text is included in our WAC language as part of the state amendment, but the blue language is what has changed in the model code.
Yeah, I knew that, but I'm trying to figure out. I thought that change with the model code was supposed to incorporate that from our state, but like maybe I'm wrong. Does anyone else read that? I thought that's what it was supposed to say. Shall not be classed as a single dwelling. Dwellings and from sleeping units in the same building. Well, maybe go ahead and keep it. It's not the end of the world. So
Yeah, I'm reading it thinking it's a pretty rare situation, I think, where you have dwelling units and sleeping units in the same structure. I mean,
yeah, I know.
maybe other people are seeing it, but it's usually they either do apartments with dwellings or they do sleeping units with hotels or whatever the case may be. So it seems like a very unlikely scenario, but it's possible, I suppose. So adding the language doesn't seem to hurt anything, but it just seems weird because it's just not the way I see things done.
Yeah, and I thought we tried to take this, I thought, at the national level, and that's kind of what some of the talk was about, and that's why it changed the way it was. But that's okay. I mean, I'm not gonna. I'd have to do a little more research to know for sure. I'm just going off my memory from the hearings.
All right, the rest of section 420 is all state amendments. For all of these, I don't have any recommendation to modify these amendments, but we'll run through them. We got 420.12 for adult family homes. We've got 420.12.1 for sleeping room classification.
No, all the adult family homes that comes from our state, right? Because we have a classification for adult family homes, and we should keep all our state amendments because that is different.
That is exactly the recommendation on this report.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to 420.14. I guess 420.13 licensed care cooking facilities is a bigger one. But I don't have any suggested modifications to that, so keep the existing amendment for that. And then we get into lofts here in 420.14. The only thing I'll note for the loft section here is that there is a new appendix P for lofts, or hold on.
Yeah, the Appendix P was taking our state stuff for lofts in there to kind of get in this in the model code, and we couldn't get it approved in the model code, so they put it in the appendix. And it's been pretty well vetted. If I don't know if this is a possibility, but I would recommend the state adopt Appendix P because it has been well worked out. And I have not reviewed Appendix P with this 420, but based on my understanding, it from when we try to bring it in the national code, it should be pretty close to the same. I don't think there was a lot of changes in it.
So, Steve and Tim, I had your names on Appendix P/Q, but that was more of a review of our existing Appendix P, where we had the construction debris material management. Did you guys happen to look at the new Appendix P at all?
I did not. Sorry, Steve here.
No, it's okay. I don't think that was specifically asked of you guys. And so I think that on this one, we should review against Appendix P and consider adoption statewide for the Appendix P. Does that sound like a movement forward on that one?
I guess I would be on the other end of that. I mean, this was a proposal and it was added into the code. So even if Appendix P ends up being the same, then people are having to defer to an appendix. Even if we at the state level adopted the appendix, it doesn't make it as easily used as somebody that's just designing per the Washington State Building Code. So I think we should leave it. And, you know, I think with time, hopefully we get Appendix P out of the appendix at the national level and brought into the regular code.
That's what I was agreeing with you and Tim on that. What I wanted to do is we should compare what Appendix P in the national code with what we have in the state, just to double check it to see, because it was heard at the hearings to be adopted, and there was a couple good suggestions at the time. That's all I was saying. I think we should keep it exactly how we have it with the the way our state has it, but it was just comparing them to see where the differences are. And I apologize, I haven't done that. I probably should have by now. I think
it would be as easy as probably calling our TCD department, if you will, Micah or someone else, to say, did we get the full code change in, or did we agree to some concessions? Because you know how it works, and there's possibilities that those got.
And I'm on that committee, so I should know. But based on my memory, I believe we pretty much got everything that was in our state. I didn't think there was anything changing because we pushed it. So
yeah, but it won't hurt to double check.
Yeah. Oh, definitely double check. Don't count on me for sure.
All right, so I am in agreement with that as well. Reviewing it against Appendix P, but leaving where it's at. For it's right here, ready to use as a state amendment. So I have it just keep existing amendment and just noted that there's a new Appendix P for lofts.
Yeah, and it'd be nice to know if there is a difference, where the difference is, just to be sure that we're dealing with the life safety. I'm thinking of life safety stuff.
Well,
that
what
we're
I
dealing
can
with the
do
proper life safety
is since this was my chapter, if we move this one to the master document today, when we come back to review the master document as a whole, I can have a breakdown of what this looks like in comparison to Appendix P, to see if there's any differences.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
All right. So for the rest of the loft limitations, we kind of have been talking about all of them as a whole. So I don't have any suggestion to modify any of these sections here. And just keep going to finish up the lofts. Ceiling height, loft means All right, so that brings us to 422.3.1. Let me make sure I didn't skip over anything. Yep, 423 is where we have everything, the rest of this. All right. 2.3.1 means of egress. Our state amendment only removes some model code language. It's to support a defend-in-place emergency response in accordance with sections 403 and 404 of the International Fire Code. I'm not sure why that particular sentence was struck there. It's not identified as new language in the 2024 code. So my recommendation was to keep the existing amendment on that one.
But isn't the defend in place italicized, so it's defined in the code?
It is, yes.
Right. So the only thing is you're saying to strike out the defend in place, or?
No, that's what the existing amendment is right now. I'm just saying leave it as is because I don't know why this was struck from the model code language.
Right, and that would have been heard by the fire, I believe in that too, and also the building. And so, because it's per the International Fire Code. I do not know top of my head 403 and 404 that great. Could you also run that by the fire tag?
Yeah.
Just to be sure, because I hate deleting something without actually knowing the reason why.
We're not deleting it. It was deleted in the previous version of the Washington Code.
That's correct.
Right, but I know, but I'm saying I think the fire, since it is a fire thing, they should. I would just like to, maybe just verify that. What I'm saying, it'd be nice to keep it if we don't have to delete it, because then we don't have to keep going back and doing that over and over again.
Yep.
That's the only reason. I mean, if you want to do it, that's fine too. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying if there's no reason to do it, then don't do it. So.
We do have a plan in place to meet up with the fire tag with our document, and we have sections that are flagged for correlation between the two codes, and this will just be added to that list.
Yeah, if you could flag that, that'd be great. Because if we don't have to delete it, we might as well not. I mean, that's the way I look at it.
Right.
It just makes it harder when one side deletes and the other one doesn't. It's especially it's just conflicts in the code.
So for 423.4.1, we have design occupant capacity. I couldn't find this one in the proposal documents. I marked it as no cost and no amendment needed. And then the next one, 423.4.2 location, marked it as a increase because the distance between storm shelters is regulated here, and so there might be more storm shelters required in this section here. And so anyway, increase but no amendment needed.
But isn't that the storm shelter within the building?
Not fewer than one exterior door. The door shows serving that building is 1,000 feet unless otherwise approved. So I copied the reason statement from this one as well, where a campus has multiple buildings far apart by requiring critical emergency operation centers have the same travel distance requirement that E-occupancy areas do. In cases, this will require multiple storm shelters as it does for E-occupancy facilities. So I guess it is for a building, but I guess if they're having to exit the building to go to the storm shelter, they want them to be located conveniently.
Right. So are you saying we do want to modify this?
No.
Oh, okay. I misheard you. I'm sorry.
No,
I got my new hearing aids. I should be able to hear better.
So it has a little bit of a cost increase in certain applications, but I don't think we need an amendment on this section. All right. Then we get to the rest of chapter 4 is all that has anything to talk about in here today is all state amendment stuff. So we have section 429 for electric vehicle charging. For all of these sections, I don't have any recommendation for a modification to the amendment and to keep the amendment. That's for all of the 429. All the way to the end. And that is the end of our document right there. Do we want to go back and revisit any section of chapter 4? All right, so if we are good with chapter 4, we're in a position to entertain a motion to move it to our master document.
I make a motion to move it to our master document.
Second.
It's Tim.
Josh.
Oh, Josh, my bad. All
He
right.
beat me to it.
Any further discussion on moving chapter 4 to our master document? Seeing no hands, all those in favor of moving this one, please say aye.
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 All righty. Thank you. We're at a convenient spot. Does anybody need a bio break or anything before moving on for the next hour?
I do actually. So this is
All
fine.
right. Let's
Justin, yeah, I need to break away
move-
for about 10 minutes for another quick consultation with one of our staff.
Okay, then how about we do it an almost 10-minute break and we'll meet back here at 3:05.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to be kicking off with chapter 32. I don't have a report back on that one, but we should be able to get through it pretty quick, I'm hoping. Let me update my share. All right, so looking here, I've got chapter 32 with no existing amendments in chapter 32, so we'll just scroll through it looking for significant changes real quick. And if anybody has anything like to say, either raise your hand or just jump right on in and start chatting. Well, took me a long time to scroll through that one. I don't see any changes in here. So we'll mark chapter 32 as none. And I believe that we are now in a position to entertain a motion to move chapter 32. Ooh.
So moved. This is Tim.
Second, this is Josh.
Josh, all righty. Any further discussion on that one? All righty. All those in favor of moving chapter 32 to our master document, please say aye.
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 Awesome. Thank you. Now then, moving to chapter 33. I am having a bit of an issue here with my screen. 1 second. I'm going to stop the share, reboot my screen. It's not fair. Okay. Let's move to a different screen. Give me one moment. All right, so we should be seeing the document here, which I've got grossly zoomed in, so give me a moment. All right, in chapter 33, let's see. We have an amendment in section 3314.1. Looking at our assignment sheet. For this one, Hoyt, did you have a chance to go through this at all? Doing a sound check for me, I guess.
I hear you, Dustin.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
I can hear you. I'm sorry about that.
You're all right.
Yeah, I didn't have any significant changes for us for the safeguards during construction.
Okay.
For these, this is more for when they're doing construction on that owner's response for fire protection. We didn't have any. I didn't see any changes for that.
Okay. So getting to our first state amendment, which is in 3314.1. Quite a ways down in here. 3314.1 fire watch during construction. Let me move some stuff here. Where required.
I looked at most of these when there's a parentheses F, right? I figured that with the fire tag would also be looking at that because it is a fire item. So that comes directly out of the fire code. Just F. That's what all the parentheses Fs mean. So if the fire had something to change, then that would be something. But I didn't have anything changed on this. So
gotcha. This is our state amendment here for 3314.1. Get that in there. So it's a little bit different with fire.
Yeah, they're talking about IRC stuff, but I always found that weird why you would be putting IRC in the IBC. It's not supposed to go that way. That should be in the IRC state amendments.
I'm sure the IRC doesn't have a fire watch requirement to start with, so, and because the IBC does reference some to the IRC, it just seems appropriate to also have that there.
Yeah, but you can't build something over 40 feet, right?
True.
So, I mean, you can't even be in the IRC. So,
Yeah, that's a good point there.
Yeah.
Is it possible this amendment stems back all the way back to the UBC days?
Yeah, it's been in there for a long time.
Okay.
To me, this would be, if you're going to put it in, you should not be putting IRC in our IBC code because you never have to go to the IBC ever if you do everything on the IRC. If you have to do a fire watch during the IRC, it should be in the IRC. So your IRC tag, you should look at this to see if you want to take the IRC in there, in their portion, because we don't, when you're in the, you don't even use anything in the IRC, you're in the IBC. So
I don't disagree with you at all, Hoyt, but there is that conversation we just had about how it's fire code. It could be a
yeah, I do think it's
fire
code. I personally think it's the fire tag should actually do this. I'm just giving you my opinion on. I don't understand why that's in our state amendments. I wasn't on it when they were doing it the last time. Since we went to 2 codes, we used to not be 2 codes, and I think that's why it's been there forever.
Yeah.
So,
but similarly, if they're just maintaining one code section, maybe it's easier
yeah,
to just include it at both spots. But I agree with you. There's no need for it in the IBC. It's just if it's easier for them to maintain one code section with state amendments and not have to change it for both each time, that makes sense to me too.
yeah, I'm with you, Tim. It's whatever. Dustin, it's kind of your guys' call on the State Building Code Council staff, what you think's the best way to do it. So,
Well, I don't know if this is one that's been on the books for a long time with no real attention to its, usefulness. I think it should be reviewed to as far as maintaining itself in there. So what I was planning on to doing is to keep the state amendment, but review for its current usefulness.
yeah, the other thing is I think it's important to put that new construction that's built under the IRS. Oh, that's an exception. You don't have to do a fire watch. Okay, that's just an exception. So I would make sure that's put in the IRC that fire watch is not required when you're in the IRC.
Well, the
That would be
IRC,
the
I don't
IRC.
think it specifies a fire watch for anything, so it's probably a moot point with that. I
That's
think what's
true.
important with this amendment is the first line, that where required by the fire code official. Because that makes it not mandatory across the board, but gives the fire code official that discretion. And I think that's probably the most important part of the amendment. I agree
Right, but
that exception number one is really a moot point anyway, simply because to get a single family home under the IRC that exceeds 40 feet in height, I'm not sure how that would happen.
Yeah, I don't think you can, but that's just.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So it's, if the amendment were to be modified, it would be just to eliminate the exception to not cause a conflict or confusion, and just keep the second exception as the only exception.
Yeah, and the one thing I think on this too, if it's in the fire code, if this is in the fire code, I personally not 100% sure. It should be exactly what the fire code says. If we keep it, there should be no different than what the fire code says.
All right, I'm just getting the rest of this put up. So what you guys see me doing here is what we're doing for the master report to get the code language in there so that we can kind of digest these sections. And
I'm someone in the belief that if we don't need it, I think we should, as a group, or maybe come back and definitely vote on it, or somehow bring it to where I don't think we should keep something just to keep it. If it doesn't make any sense anymore, we should get rid of it. So.
I agree.
I agree.
In
also,
general, I agree, but in this one, I think that first sentence to add that discretion to the fire code official is a very important distinction.
Right, but it should be in the IFC, not in our IBC.
if I understand it correctly, the discretion would not apply to an exception, or would it?
Well, the discretion applies to whether the fire watch is required in the first place. The exception is more of a blanket of it's never required if it's 5 stories and 5,000 square feet or less.
Right.
But what it does is it removes the mandatory fire watch for, let's say you have an 8-story, steel construction building and there's nothing combustible there, then it's pretty easy for the fire code official to say, no, we don't need a fire watch in this circumstance. Without that first sentence, it almost puts it as mandatory regardless. And that's why I think that first sentence is it's an important, or the only real important piece of that amendment.
Well, I think it shouldn't even be in the IBC. That's still my opinion. So it should be in the I. That's why the parentheses F is there. Fire watches are in the IFC. So
yeah, so it needs to be coordinated with the fire code, no doubt.
So as far as for now, keep the existing amendment, but review for its current application and consider should it even be included in the IBC?
yeah, it might, because then we don't have to keep track of it over years unless we really feel it's necessary to be in the IBC. I think it should just be in the IFC.
Gotcha.
Because they have more requirements on fire watch fire watches in the IFC than just that.
Then that brings us to a position where we can entertain a motion to move chapter 33 to the master document.
I'll make a
move
motion. Second.
So who was the first? Was it Tim?
Yeah.
All right. And then Hoyt. Any further discussion on chapter 33? Hearing none, all those in favor to move chapter 33 to the master document, please say aye.
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 Is there any in opposition? All right, hearing no opposition, that motion passes. And close that, save it. Okay, that is the end of chapter 32 and 33. Let me do some spreadsheet work here real quick. All right, that brings us to the last one, which is chapter 35. And then, Josh, I just got this one from you today.
Yep.
Let's put that one there. Yeah, that one. All right. Zoom out too far. Sorry, guys.
And Dustin, not to sidetrack, but if you wanted to just scribble a note for the Firewatch thing, in 3305.5.1 in the fire code, it has the similar language, and there is not a state amendment there. So it does need some correlation.
Gotcha. You said 3305 dot what?
3305.5.1 is the kind of the companion piece in the fire code.
Okay, I got a quick little note on that one.
And it kind of has the exception, but it doesn't have the first part of the sentence, and obviously doesn't have the IRC reference either. But
Gotcha.
And just to let you know, Dustin, at the hearings and all that stuff and the fire stuff, because I've been there, I mean, they talk about this Firewatch stuff a lot when they're trying to do code change proposals on the national level. So fire is the most appropriate ones to deal with this, in my opinion,
Gotcha.
because they're the ones that have to go fight it.
All right. So I'm just going to get to our state amendments in chapter 35. We have a table that we remove. Washington should be removed as all reference codes or sections of the law amendment have been adopted by the 2021 IBC. So I'll put that up here just to look at side by side in here. And as far as the significant changes in here, you don't have anything labeled as needing a state amendment. What about these ones down here at the bottom? Do you want to talk about those ones a little bit in depth?
No, that's a failed copy paste. It should have been copy pasted no all the way down.
Come on, work with me. Control C. Oh, I enable the editing.
You can actually just drag it down and it'll copy it too.
Oh, there you go. All right. So in here is most of these.
So I'll give you just kind of a brief tour. So, we had kind of talked about how we were going to be documenting this. So I did not do any editorial changes, as in codes that went from one edition to a new edition. These are all new reference standards that, solid blue text that is in that Chapter 35 document. I have them as no cost increase because it's guidance that wasn't previously in the IBC, at least as far as I could tell. So I wouldn't necessarily call that a cost increase because they're all for new materials, new situations, not necessarily amending any existing requirements.
Gotcha.
Maybe
so
amendment's the wrong word to use. I should say changing any existing requirements, but I think you understand.
Yeah. So if we just scroll through, pretty much what this report captures is anything that's just a solid blue line for a new reference standard. And then I would like to hide the spreadsheet while we run through and just look at the existing state amendment, which is just adds a couple sections here. And so you're saying that all of these have been absorbed into the model code as well.
Yes, from everything I can see, those were just kind of earlier adoptions to get into the last Washington State Code before they were officially put into the model code. And every one of those references, I believe I found in this Chapter 35 document.
Okay.
We could certainly double check too.
I'll just scroll through and look at them. We got 722. They've superseded the 716 in this one.
So what was happening is they had used the 716 and then one section of the 22. Now we have the full 22 in effect.
Yep. And then 1615.1. There it is. Boom. So first two lines down, NFPA 130-20.
Jumping in here, I need to run.
Thank you, Bill. I did a double check just a couple minutes ago. We will still maintain quorum without you, and I appreciate your time today.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
I know, Dustin, just an FYI, you're probably going to be getting from SCAW code change proposal dealing with the ACI, some of the new requirements. Hopefully, I don't know if we deal with that or if you guys deal with it internally or if that's part of our committee to look at. So they're going to put it in as a code change proposal going through the process right now.
Okay. So as I'm seeing here, it doesn't look like the model code has picked up NFPA 130 in here. Am I just double checking?
I may have made a mistake. I sure thought I had found every one of those, but certainly not free from human error.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I wonder if I saw the 13 and thought we got a new one. Oh, I bet I saw that 13D right there. Darn it. I looked at that 13D.
Yeah.
So I apologize. We may need to modify that amendment. That was in fact supposed to be 130, right? Standard for fixed guideway transit passenger rail system. No, that's a different one. Yeah.
And then 13-19 was probably upgraded to 13-22.
Yes.
Okay. So if we run back, come on.
I'd make a recommendation to also check the NFPA. Okay, that's in the fire code. It's always referenced in a lot of the fire stuff. The NFPA, we just also run that by the fire tag because they're definitely much more familiar with all the NFPA requirements.
Yeah, they went through, one of the members there did a in-depth review of NFPA 130 to encapsulate any other changes that might affect the fixed passenger whatever that one is called. I can't ever remember the full title off my head. What is it?
Yeah, it's for light rail and stuff like that,
Transit
right?
and passenger rail systems. That
Yeah.
one.
And we have one in Tacoma.
So Washington Amendment should be modified. To bring that back. Screen here. Remove the ASCE. I'm going to remove ASCE.
So like, I have a question for you, Josh. Some of the standards, right, that they're updating will increase cost of construction, right?
Of course.
Dustin, and there are, but we're not supposed to go through all that kind of stuff, are we? Say, well, this is gonna, I mean, are we? Were we supposed to do that? I wasn't. I mean, I've been reviewing all the codes right now, finding like the big one is the ANSI A117. The circles change from 60 inches to 68 inches. You know, so obviously that's a cost change because you got to make your water closets larger. I mean, but we're not supposed to do that, right?
No.
Okay. Because I don't have the kind of money to buy every single standard.
Oh, come on now. It's only thousands and thousands of dollars.
So most of it's online though.
Thousands more
Thank heavens.
pages.
Yeah, I wish that we had access to more books here at the council staff, the the standards being one of them, but that's a giant library. Okay. I think that just catching that last one for NFPA 130 covers chapter 35 and its standards. Most everything's been updated to the most current edition with a couple added in. And so
And
that's all I've got for that one.
I would kind of submit to the group too, if anyone's aware of, like what you brought up, some potential more significant changes, like we were just talking about, we certainly can't look at every single reference and understand it, but if anyone's aware of anything that is significant that should be flagged, by all means, please bring it up. But there's just not a lot of information within this chapter to go off of.
Yeah. All righty. So does anybody want to talk about any specific standards in here, or we are in a position to entertain a motion for chapter 35?
I mean, the one other change is just so people know since you're on the line, cell towers and stuff like that has changed to a new standard that is kind of significant also. So it's a TI 220H or 222H is a change, but it's not the end of the world. There it is, right there. The TI 20 or I'm sorry, 2023. That's a change, and there are some significant changes to the design of that because I've actually gone through that. So they also in the masonry one, 2014, there are some stuff in that, but I mean, 402-16. But I mean, I'm hoping we don't have to go through all the standards. I've gone through the structural stuff. That's it. So
if we want to hit any of the high points too, I mean, like ASCE 716 to 722 is an extraordinarily significant change, but
absolutely,
I don't know what all exactly we can say to that without having a whole separate committee for that book.
Well, Roger did go through the ASCE documents, and he, on his presentation, did present a little bit on that. So I think that he's kind of hit that one as a having more significance than some of these other standards.
and I think isn't our process, if we want to change something in the standards, correct me if I'm wrong, Dustin, we have to do a proposal to the state building code council to adopt a change to the standard, right?
Correct. So we have for the tsunami section and the structural section, there's some changes made to the ASCE 7. and there's a couple other ones out there in the specific ones that are escaping me. But yeah, proposals were submitted for those and then adopted by the state.
Yeah, that's what I remember, all that stuff.
All right, so we are in a position to entertain a motion for Chapter 35.
So
I'll make-
moved. Tim.
Second.
All right, any further discussion on moving Chapter 35 to our master document? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is there any opposition? All right, hearing none, that motion passes. So that does bring us almost to the end of the IBC book as a whole. We'll go ahead and cross this one off and put in today's date. So, as far as we got here, I think we need to go over the new Appendix P a little bit more. And I'm proposing that we do that as part of our review of the master document. Does anybody have a specific appendix that they would like to review at all? Or what my plan was to entertain a motion to just move the rest of the appendices to the master document.
I just have a question. The appendices, none of the appendix, as far as I know, except for Appendix P, that one they're talking about. The state, have they adopted any of the appendix outright? I thought it's jurisdiction by jurisdiction.
It is jurisdiction by jurisdiction. I want to say that there's some appendices adopted, but I might just be confusing the IRC on this one.
Yeah, the IRC has some, I know that, but I didn't think there was anything outright adopted to the appendix by the state. I could be totally wrong on that though.
I don't think so. So let's see.
Does anyone else know on this? Tim, do you know of anything that was?
It's got Appendix E adopted.
What was Appendix E?
Let's see here.
There are some accessibility things, I think, in E.
Is that what it was?
I believe so. I'm trying to find where it's adopted because I think it is.
It's adopted in 5150-003.
Okay, so that's a supplement to the accessibility Appendix E.
Yeah.
Supplementary accessibility requirements. Since nobody has had a chance or was assigned this as a specific chapter, do you want to just scroll through it real quick? It's 5 pages long.
Well, there is one change I thought in our state. We use 5% for accessible parking. And I think I could be wrong. I thought that I see 2% in some places, but I'm just glancing through it myself. So
I think you're correct, but I think that's in chapter 11 though, not in the appendix.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to flip through real quick. Oh, you're flipping through it also. So.
Need to make sure we keep that coin-operated public pay telephone.
Looks like there wasn't a whole lot of movement in this appendix during the news cycle here. We got some renumberings, but it looks like they've removed some stuff or incorporated into a different section here. Same with the renumbering here. So this is the biggest section of blue in here. Do we have anything we want to say on Appendix E? Or we could come back to it at the next meeting if we have a volunteer who wants to review it.
Is that it? Just that one blue section there?
This is the only change I see other than some renumbering, and it leads me to believe that just some stuff was removed in
So
here.
is it 10%? Mike, you might know this top of your head. Is it 10% correct? Can you go up to the other up higher up the
Oh, sure. That's what I was about to just look up to see if we had any conflict in.
not more than 10% of the accessible units shall be used to satisfy the minimum number of units required to provide accessible communication features. I don't know where that came from, so.
I don't think
So I
there's a
just want to,
conflict.
sorry, I was
Sorry,
going to
go ahead.
right underneath the title. It says the provisions contained in this appendix are not mandatory unless specifically referenced in the adopting ordinance. So is this something that the state approved? So basically any local jurisdiction can adopt it if they choose to, but it's not required for everybody.
That is kind of my understanding for all of the appendices that are adopted by the state, is they're not necessarily mandatory, but they're pre-adopted by the state so that if a local jurisdiction wanted to adopt them, say like the ones in the IRC that might affect the residential
Right.
construction, they don't have to come to the IBC or to the SBCC for approval before enforcing that.
But they
Okay.
do have to, Tim, they do have to, on the appendix, they have to make sure if there's a state amendment, we need to modify the appendix to the state amendment so they don't do something less restrictive for
Yeah,
XYZ reasons. I think we do have to do that part.
yeah, if the state code specifically adopts the appendix, then it is specifically adopted for everybody. And so it does become mandatory for everybody unless they were to amend it out. And in this case, it's an accessibility issue, which local jurisdictions can't amend out. So it does become a mandatory piece of the code.
Are we sure this appendix is in the WAC? I only see Appendix P, but I might be looking in the wrong place.
So
it is where Dustin showed the
5150
5150-003. It does say the 2021 edition of the International Building Code, including Appendix E.
Okay.
So it is the only appendix that is included in the state's adoption.
Thank you.
I'm curious if when that provision was written in 5150, if we could look back what Appendix E was at the time, because I'll be the first one to admit I've never required 10% accessible parking like what this would require, or followed possibly some of these other provisions because I've never reviewed to it at all. So,
but it has been there for a long time, and it's always been accessibility provisions. Whether they've changed over the years, I can't give you a good answer.
So it looks like that one goes back to 2003. And I'm looking now, Appendix E in the 2003 code is the supplementary accessibility requirements as well.
Yeah, so the reason why that was in there, I can tell you, because we skipped the 2001. There was a lot of accessibility requirements that weren't picked up in our state. We went from the 97 Uniform Building Code to the 2003. And so that was why that was put in there. But Tim's correct. I believe all our state amendments to Chapter 11 kind of incorporates all these certain things. So I'm not 100% sure we need to supplement accessibility requirements. I think it should be reviewed closely, but most of the stuff that I've already looked at is in the ANSI. So I'm not sure why we're having an additional appendix that's already in the ANSI. So, and remember this guideline comes from the transportation barrier, which, if there's a transportation facility, a lot of time is reviewed by the transportation, and they're actually behind on the code. Their code is actually the older ANSI, 2006, I think. That's how far back they are. So the feds are, that's where the feds are backwards.
So I could do I did chapter 11. I could do a close read of this appendix against ANSI and see if there's anything that's not already in ANSI as it relates per your inquiry there.
Okay.
And as for a side by side, I remember going through this really closely, but it was probably 20 years ago now. And I recall it not having any conflict with the current adoption at the time. But again, that's 20-year-old information. Because it does just supplement most of these things as opposed to, it doesn't address or let me rephrase that. At the time, it didn't add or change technical information that was already in 11. It was, truly a supplement to give additional circumstances some guidance.
Okay.
But yeah, it certainly wouldn't hurt to do a side by side and look at that again now.
If we did side by side, we could make the recommendation to get rid of it too, right? Because it's all within the ANSI.
Yes.
Yes.
And in mind, that would be the best solution for everyone, because I know a lot of architects have problems with this when we have appendix in there. So adopted by the state.
If we decide to keep it, the appendix, then I as an architect in the room, I'd like to add a pointer in chapter 11 to this mandated appendix, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
So, but I did it once a long time ago, a while ago. I believe it was with the 2006. It was a while ago when I looked at it, and I didn't see any differences between the ANSIs at that time. So they were comparing it to the 2009 A117. I thought, so I didn't worry about it. So.
And the other caution here is if we do decide that we don't need it, we need to look at it really carefully, because this, I think, was adopted back when the state did submit essentially the accessibility provisions that establish the state code as safe harbor. So that our state code, if you followed the state code, it kind of provided that safe harbor for essentially for any civil rights complaints to be made, because we are, what we're doing is we don't implement ADA, we implement the building code. And we obviously have nothing to do with ADA challenges or any of that, but what we try to do is have a building code that will protect people hopefully from those claims.
Yeah. And on that, Mike, I've been in the accessibility training for the feds, gone through all that. They are behind on the ANSI. So just FYI.
Yeah. Well, and I just, the only reason I bring it up is to make, the point of when this was adopted, it was, in that effort to have that safe harbor document. And I don't think in the last 2 decades that the state has pursued that, and nor do I know if the feds have are even paying much attention anymore either. But
hey, Mike, you've mentioned that a few times about the state code being deemed safe harbor. I noticed on the Access Board's website, the 2006 IBC, as published, if you will, was deemed safe harbor. So you would think if there was no changes to the accessibility, which it didn't require Appendix E at all, that you would still be safe harbor. Just be was there a separate, I guess, push that Washington State went through the same process?
Yeah, I could tell you what happened in my experience on this is because there's Fed funding and stuff like that, so they have to get the Fed approval. they wanted to make things kind of match. And the building code was faster than the feds were adopting the changes in the code. So that's what was explained to me, why that was in there for the safe harbor part. So, but I know that the feds and ANSI and all those have been working together to try to get that if you met the new ANSI that we adopted, you met all the feds requirements. So which means that people wanted federal money, because you had to get federal money. They had to show that they're equivalent to what the feds approved. And ICC made sure that the ANSI, because they do it on a committee that I'm on, to make sure we don't do stuff less restricted than what the feds already require. It's actually more restrictive.
And the answer your question for to me too, all the things that I'm recalling on all this predated the 2006. So if the 2006 was declared safe harbor, then we, that would be more current than the state going through the process on their own for that. So really, I think what it is, it's a good question for the State Building Code Council to pose to ICC to see if ICC has continued to pursue that safe harbor declaration for each subsequent edition of the codes, because that sure would make it easier on our end to know that it has been declared that way. With
so
or
this is
without the supplement.
This is kind of interesting. I just did a quick search, and ICC did a news release that the 2018 IBC was deemed safe harbor, and the previously approved one was 2006. So the 2018 was deemed safe harbor by HUD, but it doesn't say anything about ADA on here or the access board. So at least one of the standards has been deemed safe harbor, or meaning HUD has deemed it safe harbor for multifamily, but
yeah, well, good.
Yeah, take some more research on the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Eric Contreras, there's a guy named Eric Contreras that teaches those class for ANSI, and that's what he said also in this class. I've been taking those for the last year. They still have them. If anyone's ever interested, they can reach out to me. They're free classes. You just take online. So.
All right. So as far as Appendix E goes, we're gonna review that a little bit more and come back and chat about it. Are there any other appendixes that we should pay any special attention to?
There is one that our state could do. There's a thing called Earthquake Recording Instrument, Appendix L.
Appendix L. Let me pop that one open.
And this is one of those things that they're trying to get kind of recording how earthquakes act on buildings that we have. And I'm just curious if that's something with people on the line here, if that's something that people think is something our state should adopt or not. I know California has adopted something similar, but basically records the earthquake, so you get data from it, so you're able to better represent the performance of buildings. Josh, is Josh still on here, or did he got off, didn't he?
I'm still here.
Other structure. Oh yeah, that would be something. I mean, I think it's fairly inexpensive, but it's not bad to have that data for future. But I don't know if that's something. I thought I'd ask it in this group if that's something that people would think would be a good thing. I mean, obviously the appendix is you can either adopt it or not, but it would sure be great to have something like this in our state. But I don't know if people would think that'd be too expensive.
And that's kind of the big question, right? Is what is the cost? And
Yeah.
I suppose that's where I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. That's what I wish I could figure out. I don't know how to find that out.
So this appendix just says that in buildings of a certain size, accelegraphs need to be placed.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly right. It's just these are for big buildings. And so what happens, you get data from it and you're able to, you know, in the future, use that data to design buildings more efficiently.
Yeah, it needs to be placed and maintained. So it's a bit of a
Yeah.
cost factor there too. So yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And usually what people have done, they'll put that in there for they want to maintain the instrument to get the data. So the way the way it happens in California when they don't get the data from the earthquake, they know, oh, this one's not working, and they go fix it. I mean, so maintain is not something they have to go out there all the time. It's like when an earthquake happens, did they receive the data? If they didn't, then they go and fix it. So I don't know. I just thought I'd bring it up in this group, what other people thought. If that's something we want to, this is new, this appendix L, I think, or has it been in there for a while? I can't remember. But I know California has adopted this, so or adopted something similar. They have their own state building code.
Well, I mean, I think it's a good idea, but I think the questions about cost and maintenance,
Yeah,
are the big questions here.
yeah. The nice thing about the appendix, though, when it's in the appendix, um, I guess it comes down. I guess that's true because correct me if I'm wrong, Dustin. If the jurisdiction adopts an appendix, they got to get approval from the state, don't they? Still.
Only if it affects the residential construction.
Okay, so if it doesn't affect the residential, then they can adopt it or not. Okay.
Yep. All right. So do we want to entertain any motion on the appendices or kind of table them until we come back and talk about Appendix E and Appendix P?
I would be willing to make a motion to approve all the appendix to the master documents, with a note to review Appendix E and Appendix P, with the final document.
Okay.
I'd second that.
Yeah, I'll second it too. Yeah.
All right. Any further discussion on appendixes and their review? Hearing none. All those in favor of moving the appendices to our master document, please say aye.
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 Any in opposition? All right, hearing none, that motion passes. And that brings us to within 5 minutes of the end of our scheduled time here. And I would say that we've effectively completed the IBC. And I think that if we held off to hit the IE, if I just said IEBC, I meant IBC. And we can hold off and hit the IEBC on Tuesday next week and potentially hit the appendices. I think if we maybe hold those off until Thursday or the end of the Tuesday meeting would be appropriate. That way we can get some more movement on the IEBC. I would, I guess, open this up. Is there any other business on today's meeting?
The only thing that I want to make sure, the ones that had the fire, right? You were going to definitely coordinate with the fire tag, right?
Yeah,
ones,
so
right? Okay.
when we get the master document going, you should start seeing flags off to the side of the main body of the report to indicate sections that we've identified as, needing correlation with the fire tag.
Okay.
I need to get together with the chairs of all the groups and see if they would prefer the master document be fully vetted before coordination or do the coordination meeting before we fully vet them and get ready to present them to the committees. I kind of think that a coordination meeting before the final review would be most appropriate.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All righty. Any other business today? Hearing none, I will adjourn this meeting at 3:57.
Everyone have a good day.